good evening. I am excited to be here again tonight to dive into another recovery support group for those who are embracing intuitive eating as a pathway to healing, whether that's from eating disorder, body dysmorphia, or dealing with any kind of discomfort around the relationship with food. Sometimes that falls under the category of EDNOS, eating disorder not otherwise specified. Maybe you're just somebody who's had a history of dieting, and you really have gotten to this place with all the conflicting advice about what's healthy, what's not, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, and all the different ideals as far as how society tells you your body needs to look in order to be healthy. And this has created complication for you around your relationship with food. And you're just trying to get yourself back to a place where you can eat like a quote unquote normal person. Okay. But it's kind of funny. You can't even really say that anymore nowadays because who eats normal anymore, right? And so it's so hard to run into somebody who's just a natural eater. I've met a few, and I highly recommend if you know somebody, if you're fortunate enough to have somebody in your life who has a really good relationship with food in their body, somebody who's never been on a diet before, somebody who just thinks the idea of going on a diet is the craziest thing in the world. I highly recommend you drop in with that person, talk to them, and ask them some questions. Talk about your relationship with food and see where the differences are. And I think you'll find it very illuminating. It's always so helpful to connect with people who still have a balanced relationship with nourishing themselves. And there's a lot that could come forward in that kind of a discussion. So if you do know somebody and they are open to talking about it, do ask. It's always nice to respect personal boundaries. Do ask them if they're open to having a conversation with you. And if they are, most of the time they are, I think you're going to be very surprised what comes forward in that conversation. And before I dive into the topic tonight for this group, I did want to say that I know that I had initially planned on doing this weekly, but in sitting with it since the last one, I really feel like first I sort of want to build a following for this. I recognize that when I first start doing these recovery support groups, it may take some time for people to bring their voices in. May take some time for people to even know about it. I'm very new here on YouTube. I haven't even been on YouTube for a year now. And as far as on Cobra's medicine bag, I've just really started to develop this channel just over the past couple of months. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time before people know I got this going on here. And I want to give an opportunity for that to build before I really commit to a weekly schedule with it. And as I sat and leaned into it after the last one, I decided that I'm going to do it bi-monthly, so twice a month. I'm not sure of the dates yet. It's probably going to have to be a little flexible. I'll try to give some kind of heads up in the future when I'm about to do it, but I did recognize that I got so caught up in what I got on deck this month, just with getting some courses out on the Cobra's Medicine Bag website, which I got a new one that's launching on July 8th. It's available for pre-sale now at 50% off, and that is bringing your thyroid back to life with Ayurveda. Okay, so it's a step-by-step approach, guided experience, outlined like a course with lessons, but there's an opportunity for live Google Meet support group around the material where you can ask me questions. I am a licensed Ayurvedic practitioner. I'm licensed through NAMA, the National Ayurvedic Medical Association. And so I'm going to be available for live consultation within the group. So it's a really dynamic learning experience. There's also a support forum on the website that's attached to the group that's very private. Only those enrolled within that workshop have access to that forum and can even see that that forum exists. Okay, so it's a place for you all to ask questions, bring in your experience, get any clarification you need on anything that's outlined in the workshop. And these support forums are available in all the courses on the Cobra's Medicine Bag website. The other thing I'm working on over these past few days and leading into next week is the final lesson in the intuitive eating course, which was a 10-month journey. So I've been traveling through that with a group of people. It's been a really wonderful experience. And yeah, so my attention has been there and I've been balancing a lot. I'm trying to find the balance, right? This is so important, finding the balance, knowing what my limits are, making sure that I'm working in a way that not only continues to keep me inspired and fulfilled, but also, I'm able to keep myself, energized, my self-care a priority, so I can really show up and give you all the best I have to offer. So I decided to kind of just pull it back a little bit with this recovery support group here on YouTube. Just initially, we'll see. Once it gets rolling, if there's a lot of interest and people show up, I imagine the first few times I do this is probably just going to be me talking to an empty room, and I'm okay with that. The replays will remain up. You can always drop in. You can always drop me a comment. I'm very responsive to questions, comments, so feel free to leave them. I will get back to you, okay? And if you have any questions about intuitive eating counseling, and that's something you'd like to explore on more of a one-on-one basis, you can always reach out to me at cobrasmedicinebag@gmail.com. Just shoot me an email and we can, connect with each other, and I can help you figure out the best way that I can support you on your journey. And we can figure out something that will give you, a good head start down this path. It's a path that once you go down this direction, you never can go back to dieting and the old way. Not when you really commit to it, and having support through the process is so key with intuitive eating. I think I've heard a lot of people say like, oh, I picked up the book, I've tried intuitive eating, or I, read about it on social media and I experimented with it, but, it didn't work for me. I gained a bunch of weight, and that's because you have to understand that a lot of people are still viewing intuitive eating with a diet mentality. Okay. So there's this piece about the disordered eating aspect that it really does require support in order to be able to integrate this method, because there's a whole bunch of things that you need to sort of unravel in your mentality, in your consciousness, before you really can get back to that natural, biologically driven way of eating. You may hear a little, scratching around, munching, sounds in the background. That's just Ted, the German Shepherd ally, who's here to help hold space for this group. And he likes to interrupt sometimes. Sometimes he has a point that he wants to make. So I just want you to be aware of what those mysterious noises are in the background. It's real live around here. Okay. So tonight we're talking about a pretty hot topic. Okay. And I think you've seen this all over YouTube on videos, from different fitness influencers all over YouTube. You hear people talking about it on Instagram. You hear people talking about it on Facebook. It's pretty much everywhere you go, right? These videos or these posts that are what I eat in a day, right? And so I thought, well, I'm going to do this for the support group, and I'm going to do this from the perspective of an intuitive eater. So what I eat in a day as an intuitive eater, none of your business. Now, that may seem a little harsh, you know. You may expect me to go down a list of foods that I typically eat on a day-to-day basis and what the balance of macronutrients is in my diet and how often I let myself have a treat. But I'm here to tell you that this right here, this is kind of the crux of the problem. And I'm going to go into why. First of all, big time boundaries, okay? How somebody chooses to eat, how somebody chooses to nourish their body is nobody's business but that person. Now you may say, oh, but what if they're unhealthy? Or, what if their doctor wants them to change their diet? Or what if well-meaning friends or family want to make suggestions that they eat healthier? First of all, I'm going to tell you right now that if somebody is in an unhealthy place in their relationship with food in their body, and maybe they are abusing food, much like a substance, much like an alcoholic would abuse alcohol or a drug addict would abuse drugs, okay? They are well aware that they're not in a healthy place. They're well aware that they're having an issue. You're not bringing on some big illuminating, moment for them. And you micromanaging what they're eating, how they're eating, how much, is actually not going to help at all. And I mean, show of hands in the room, those of you who have had issues with food or body image. Did it ever help you? Did it ever help you when somebody started to try to micromanage your food or started trying to give you suggestions about what you should eat or what kind of diet you should go on, or, hey, you need to lose some weight? Did any of those things ever help you? Did any of those things ever spark real lasting change in your relationship with food in your body? Did they transform your health? I don't think there will be anybody that raises their hand. You may have started to go down that road out of shame, out of feeling pressured, just to get people off your back, but it doesn't spark any kind of real sustainable, lasting change. Because when it comes down to it, it's not about the food at all. It's about what you're using the food to bypass. In other words, the emotions that you're avoiding feeling, or the discomfort that's coming up in you around certain issues you're dealing with in your life, where you don't feel like you have any control, where you feel confused, where you're struggling, where you're having a hard time. And so you find solace in this food. You find solace in emotional eating or in binging, or conversely, you feel a sense of mastery and control in your life artificially through controlling your intake of food and exercise, because your body, that's something you can control. You can't always control what's happening in your life. Other people take actions, things happen unexpectedly. It changes your whole experience, and you're kind of left to deal with the fallout of that, right? That's where strong self-care skills comes in. That's where having a good support system comes in. People you can turn to when you're struggling or you're having a hard time. And a lot of people who struggle with any kind of eating disorder issues really have a hard time reaching out for help. Okay? And Ted's wanting to go outside. He always does this. So one moment, he always has to have this moment where he takes center stage and alive. I've just come to accept it's part of the process. So until you develop those skills, though, because it's very difficult for people with these issues to say, hey, I'm having a hard time, I'm struggling emotionally, I could really use some support, are you willing to talk to me for a little bit? Or to go and seek out a support group. And again, I mentioned it the last time, I'm going to mention it again now, that if you are struggling with eating disorder, you don't know your first step to take. Maybe you're afraid to go and talk to your doctor about it. I highly recommend you go to ANAD.org and look up some information and resources there. They also have a list of completely free support groups that are often led by eating disorder psychologists. It's a very inclusive environment, and it's a very safe space. At these ANAD groups, you don't even have to talk. You don't even have to bring your piece in if you're not ready. You can just come and receive, and you can listen to other people share, and you can get the guidance and the directive of these eating disorder specialists within the group that really it's invaluable. It's invaluable, and it's a wonderful free resource. And they have these support groups all over the country. Okay, so I highly recommend that if you are feeling challenged, go to ANAD.org as a first step towards getting yourself some help. Okay, but getting back to this whole thing about what I eat in a day. All right, so we've already covered why it's kind of nonsense. All right, it's nonsense to even ask the question. First of all, because it's not really anybody's business what you eat in a day. And what you eat in a day is going to shift from day to day naturally if you are eating according to your biological cues. If you have a healthy relationship with food, if you are not dieting, if you're not trying to control what you're eating, okay, and you're just responding to what your body is asking for, what your eating looks like from one day to the next is going to fluctuate. It's not always going to be the same. You're not always going to eat the same things. You're not always going to eat the same amount of food. Some days you may be more hungry than you are on other days. Some days you may eat very light. Some days you may notice that you're craving a lot of protein. Other days you may be needing more carbohydrates, okay? It's not static. So just the very nature of the question is kind of ridiculous. First of all, it's invasive. What do you eat in a day? It's none of your business. And I actually encourage you, it's a good first step in sort of, taking back ownership of your body and your right to nourish yourself as you see fit by, drawing a boundary line. If somebody starts poking and prodding into your relationship with food, unless, of course, you're working with a psychologist or you're working with an intuitive eating counselor or you're working with a medical professional. If just socially you have friends asking you, what do you eat in a day? What's your day-to-day diet look like? I would just say, it fluctuates. And I don't really want to talk about what I eat in a day. What I eat in a day is my business. It's actually very empowering to start putting down some boundary lines about what is and is not appropriate for people to ask to have a window view on. And getting back that sense of ownership over how you nourish your body is a very important piece in embracing the path of intuitive eating. The other thing I would say is, what do you think you're going to get? What do you think you're going to gain by asking somebody what they eat in a day? Is it going to give you some huge revelation? Is it suddenly going to transform your relationship with food? Do you think that if you know how they eat, you can just eat the same way as them and then your body's going to magically look like theirs? Do you see how ridiculous this is? Every body is different. And in Ayurveda, we know this. We even classify the body into different types, right? Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And usually people are a combination of two different dosha types. So they're a Vata Pitta or Pitta Vata or Vata Kapha or Kapha Vata or Pitta Kapha, Kapha Pitta. what dosha is mentioned first is the one that predominates. It's the one that kind of, takes the lead as far as dosha types are concerned. And usually there's one dosha that's stable. It holds down the fort, which means it's just least likely to go out of balance. Doesn't mean you can't ever have imbalance in that dosha. It actually means when you hear your prakruti or your birth constitution, like I'm a vata pitta or I'm a pitta vata, really what you're looking at is these are the areas where I'm most likely to go out of balance. These are the areas where I'm most likely to have challenges. And yes, each of the types also has their strengths. Okay. I'll just use myself as example. I'm a pitta vata. Pitta is my dominant dosha. Kapha is my stable dosha. Kapha is the one that holds down the fort. Kapha rules over the immune system, and it also rules over the lymphatic system. So that means I'm a pretty hardy person. It's not likely that I'll get sick very often. If I do, I'm fairly robust. I'll bounce back pretty fast. And my circulation functions pretty well. I'm least likely to go out of balance in those areas, or least likely to struggle with other kapha imbalance sort of symptoms, such as sluggishness, or weight gain, or lethargy or depression. But I have absolutely had kapha imbalance in my life before, and I have struggled with those things in the past. Okay. But we cleared that out, and I got back to my natural state of balance. And I did that all with Ayurveda and intuitive eating. Let me let Ted back in. Being a pitta dominant, I have to really be aware of my digestion. Pitta rules over the digestion. So if I'm going out of balance, that's the first place I'm going to notice it. I'm going to notice digestive distress. I'm going to notice kind of acidic digestive conditions like heartburn, acid reflux, ulcers, things like this are really connected to pitta imbalance. Also, just having low agni, low digestive fire, if you're eating food and you're noticing your tummy is getting bloated up, you're belching a lot after you eat, you're gassy, those are signs that you don't have enough digestive fire. And this piece is important, so I'm glad we're bringing it in, even though it's a little bit off topic. Sometimes the reason why people aren't able to maintain, a size that's healthy for them is because they actually have digestive issues. And the reality is they're malnourished. And people think that's crazy. They think, oh, obesity is totally a case of eating too much or overnourished. No, 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 no. No. A lot of times it's related to the fact that there's not enough digestive fire because you've eaten too many kapha producing foods. It creates kapha accumulation. So when there's kapha accumulation, a cold, damp environment develops in the gut. Mucus tends to form, okay? And this suppresses the digestive fire. It makes food sit in transit too long, which throws off the inner ecology of the whole GI tract. And then you don't digest your food properly. And then you can develop more permeability in your intestines, in your stomach lining. And this is all due to excess acidity from food not breaking down properly. And if your food is not breaking down properly, you can't assimilate the nutrients. All right. So you actually end up malnourished no matter how much you're eating. So this is the first piece that's really like, kind of turns things on their head, from a Western perspective. Because in Western thought, we look at things as symptoms, let's treat the symptom. But that's what's different about an Ayurvedic approach, and why it marries so beautifully with intuitive eating is that Ayurveda goes all the way down to the root. No, what is the root of the problem? And I'm not saying those of you that are struggling with carrying around too much weight for your body, and if you're having those issues, if you're joints are hurting, your back is hurting, you feel low energy, you're sluggish, your food isn't digesting well, you got brain fog, like you know if you're carrying around more weight than your body truly needs, okay? And if that's the case, it's time to really start looking at it in a different way. Maybe you're not being well enough nourished, okay? And getting in touch with intuitive eating can really help facilitate that. You getting your actual nutritional needs met. And then when you bring in the Ayurvedic piece and you learn how to stoke your Agni, you learn how to stoke your digestive fire and engage in supportive self-care practices that actually rehab your digestion, get it back on track. A lot of times people find, their weight issues balancing out rather naturally. But it's so powerful when you bring the Ayurveda and the intuitive eating together, which is why I've done that and why I've sort of switched up the order of the process with intuitive eating so that it can really be accessible to people when they first come to this path after, a lifetime of struggling with disordered eating or chronic dieting. Okay. Now, my secondary is Vata, and Vata rules over the nervous system, also bone health, okay, also lungs, all right? So that's the second area where I'm more susceptible to go out of balance, right? And there's strengths associated with each of those doshas too. As a Pitta, I'm enterprising, I'm ambitious, I got a sharp mind, I'm a good communicator, okay? I can get things done. I can focus. I can focus on a goal and hit the target. As a Vata, I'm creative. I get a lot of inspiration. I'm a good networker, okay? So each type has their strengths. Kaphas, aside from the immune issues and the lymphatic issues that they can run into when out of balance, they are such solid, grounded people, They are wonderfully compassionate people. They have a deep well of love for their fellow person. They're wonderful caregivers, okay? And sometimes when out of balance, Kapha can caregive to a fault at their own expense, all right? So just bringing in this piece because in Ayurveda, there's recognition that we're not all the same. We're not. We are all each a unique blend of different elemental qualities. And therefore, one way of eating is not going to work for everybody. Okay? This is why some people, they'll embrace a high protein way of eating. And they'll feel amazing on that. They feel satisfied. They feel like it really works for them. And then another person will do that and they feel just awful, Or this is why some people are like, oh, I just absolutely love kombucha, makes me feel great. And another person can't stand the stuff, makes them feel awful. All right. There is no one superfood, okay? There just isn't. At the end of the day, the takeaway I want you to get from both Ayurveda and intuitive eating, more than anything, is that you are unique. And the code that unlocks your keys to obtaining the health you desire, the balance you desire in your body, it is all highly individual. And the only way you can get in touch with it is by really sinking into your body and learning how to listen, learning how to get in touch with your body, what your body's asking for, noticing what hunger feels like in your body again. Some of you, it's going to take you time to relearn your natural, biologically driven way of eating. You think it should be easy, but what people don't understand is if you've been a chronic dieter or you've had, years of eating disorder, you've really learned how to disconnect from your body and you eat more according to your mind and the rules you've made around your eating. So to find out what somebody's eating, how they eat so they can look a certain way, that may work for them, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And as long as you kind of approach things with this mentality where you are looking outside of yourself at other people, how they eat, what their practices are, you are really moving away from intuitive eating, and you're continuing to eat from the perspective of somebody who struggles with the diet mentality. The diet mentality externalizes. It looks for guidance outside of the self. An intuitive eater goes intuitive, okay? It's not extuitive. It's intuitive. You got to go inside yourself, and you got to get used to feeling, all right? And this is why it's helpful to have support. This is why it's helpful to have a support group when you first come to this path, or why it's helpful to work with an eating disorder professional, or why it's helpful to work with an intuitive eating counselor, because we help support you in getting in touch with your emotions in ways that don't feel activating. You learn how to hold that space for yourself through different techniques. And it's a very important piece. And again, this is why I've brought the Ayurveda in, okay? Because it's so pivotal. It's so pivotal to understand your unique type, to understand how your body functions, to understand that it's not just about the body, though. It's mind, body, spirit. And all of it is interconnected, and it all plays a part in each other. It's a comprehensive experience. It's not just about the size of your gut, or, what size dress you wear, or how you look in a bikini, or any of these things. It's really about getting to understand your unique body and doing something that's actually pretty unconventional nowadays, where you're really tuning out the noise from the peanut gallery that you get from media, from your friends' circles, that you see on social media. And you're saying, you know what? I'm going to choose to just love up on my body right here and now. And I don't need to wait until I'm a particular size. And I don't need to wait until I'm finally at peace with food. I can start right now, loving and appreciating my body, where it's at, having some compassion for myself if I've really gone out of balance because, I got so confused by all this conflicting information that I was taking in from the diet industry, from the people around me, okay? And I will tell you, this piece, about being curious about what somebody else is doing, how they're getting to change their body, in some cases rapidly, right? We've seen this. We've seen this before, somebody around us is on a weight loss journey, and we see they're shrinking by the minute, it seems. And then you think, ooh, I want to know what they're doing because that'll work for me. Okay, what you need to understand is that person is still eating in a way that works for their body. And again, you don't know if they are really eating in a natural, biologically driven way. A lot goes on behind closed doors. It's really true. For all you know, they're severely restricting their food. For all you know, they're listening to their stomach grumble and gnaw, and they're ignoring it. For all you know, they're avoiding all the foods that they love, and they're eating foods that they have to gag down because it'll make them look a certain way, which is debatable, okay? Because a lot of times when people do achieve success or results in this way, one of two things happens. Either they have their success, but it's fleeting, it's not lasting. And sooner or later, they can't continue to restrict in that way. They can't continue to exercise at the level they're exercising at because they're doing everything that's out of harmony with their body. They're not listening to their body. They're imposing these rules upon their body, all to look a certain way, okay? Which means they're completely disconnected from the experience of their body and what their body is actually communicating to them. So eventually there's backlash. The body feels too deprived. And I tell you, at the end of the day, biology will always win. Biology will always win. And the impulse to eat will become so strong that usually what ends up happening is if there were foods that were restricted, people start eating those restricted foods in excess. They don't just have a cookie or two. They eat the whole dang pack, right? They don't just have a handful of chips. They just sit in front of the TV with the bag and they eat the whole bag. You need to understand that this kind of eating is directly related to restricting those foods. It's biologically driven. You can't override biology, you know, you can't. And then there's also the piece that some of these foods, the highly processed foods, they're actually manufactured to spark binging. They actually have ingredients in them that affects your biochemistry, that does spark cravings, that does compel you to eat more. We see this with things like high fructose corn syrup, okay, is a big one. MSG is another, which, by the way, autolyzed yeast extract, it's just another fancy name for MSG. So I would really say those are the two biggies, you know, to look out for in terms of how they affect cravings. Both of those have been proven to spark cravings and overeating. You know, there's a reason why a lot of restaurants have used MSG in their food because it makes the customer want to eat more, which means more money, more profits. Okay, and that's why these high processed foods are often produced by these big food corporations, right? Okay. So there's this piece too. And I bring this piece in as well. You know, the food industry is big business, and make no bones about it. The food industry is absolutely, you know, in bed with the pharmaceutical industry, with the medical industry. It is all interconnected. It's the Food and Drug Administration. All right. Don't forget it. And there's a reason for that. It's profits. It's big profits. The diet industry alone is a $60 billion plus industry annually. Annually. And they don't profit off of you listening to your body, feeling empowered, knowing that you hold all the keys to your health if you would only listen. They profit off of your insecurity. There's a reason why there's these unattainable beauty ideals. If they're unattainable, you're going to be a good customer. You're going to be hooked. You're going to keep coming back for more, right? Because you're never going to get that. You're never going to hit that mark. It's not natural. It's not attainable. And so in a way, there's also this process we go through where we have to grieve. It may sound silly, but it's true. You know, some of us have become so identified with obtaining this ideal. You know, we spent years trying to achieve this lasting ideal and always just like falling short of the mark, or maybe we achieve it, but just for a little bit. And then the next thing we know, gained all the way back and then some, right? And the cycle begins all over again. The next diet will be different. This will be the last one. It's never going to work. Okay. And as we talked about in the last group, diet just means the way you eat. But what I'm talking about is bad diets, okay? I'm talking about restricting your food, monitoring your food, controlling your food to the extent where it overrides your biological instincts. And you're going hungry, or you're eating foods because they're healthy, even though every time you eat them, you get digestive distress. It doesn't work for your body. All right. Food is something that not only should nourish you and sustain you, it should give your body radiant energy. Your meals should be satisfying. They should be pleasurable. And yes, health is important. Absolutely. But I'll tell you, if you're really listening to your body, if you're really listening to your body, you're not going to want to eat cookies 24/7. And initially, you may feel compelled to do that. But, that's one of the things that I help people work with is how do you explore making peace with food in a way that's not activating, especially if they're foods that you have tended to have kind of like an addictive sort of relationship with. And a lot of times, these are things like the quote unquote junk foods or what they like to call play food in intuitive eating. All right. I like to call them treats. They're treats. Um, and everybody deserves to have a little bit of a treat now and then. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you've had a really addictive relationship with these foods, you have to explore them kind of safely. Food is very different from other types of addictions in the sense that, and I do think you should look at it as an addiction. This is important. Even in the case of eating disorder, you have to understand that you're reaching for certain foods because you're trying to balance out your chemistry, you know? Certain foods can give you kind of a serotonin boost, right? Certain foods provide tryptophan and they give a calming influence. This is one of the reasons why, if you feel emotionally activated, this is especially the case in people who have binge eating disorder or emotional eating patterns, you tend to reach for certain foods because they actually do have an effect that calms you down. But see, the key to overcoming that is actually learning how to be with your emotions, how to hold space for your emotions, and learning how to produce those same results without food. And there's a lot of different routes to getting there, you know? There's meditative practices, there's yoga, there's breath work, pranayama that you can do. There's pampering activities you can do that can give you the same kind of, a serotonin boost. All right. There's other means. There's self-care means, and in some future recovery support groups, we'll go into some of that stuff when that's the topic. But I'm just kind of like touching upon it right now so you can understand. But I always tell people initially, like, there's this important step in intuitive eating where it's about making peace with food. And they kind of give you an exercise where you write down every food that you've ever restricted, and one by one, you let yourself explore that food and get used to having a little of it and enjoying it without feeling activated like you have to go out of balance with it and binge on it, or without, conversely, if you're somebody who's had very restrictive patterns or anorexic patterns, fear eating the food because you think somehow it means you're going to go out of control, which is really what it's about. People think on the surface that the anorexic fear is gaining weight, but you have to understand the physical, it's just like the scapegoat, okay? The weight is the scapegoat. What the anorexic really fears is losing the sense of control that they have. It's a false sense of control, but it's very seductive and they're very attached to it, and that's because inside, emotionally, they are dealing with feelings that they feel overwhelmed by, and it makes them feel out of control. So they restrict the food because by having this control over their body, it makes them feel more empowered. It's not a genuine empowerment, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. It must be remembered that anorexia has an extremely high mortality rate. Once you're in the place of clinical anorexia, very, very few people see the other side of that. It's very serious, And sometimes people start out as chronic dieters, but if you have the latent genetic link, to be predisposed to anorexia, to bulimic, you know. Sometimes that chronic dieting can be a gateway to activating those latent genes and going into full-blown eating disorder. It happens. And we see this a lot with people who are very obsessed with clean eating, orthorexia, you know. It's actually an eating disorder now. And it's been sparked by all this diet industry focus on eating really clean. Now, is it great to, focus on whole foods? Absolutely. Is it going to kill you if you have some processed food now and then? Absolutely not. And if you're really listening to your body's not going to want the processed food all the time, because fact of the matter is it just doesn't make your body feel as good as when you're eating whole foods, natural foods. You know, there's a big difference in how it feels, to eat something that's made with like high fructose corn syrup, for example, compared to a wonderful dessert that you made in your own kitchen with whole ingredients and love. It translates different in the body. It's a fact. And that's the thing. We become so disconnected from our eating experience because we're always looking outside of ourselves. Well, how does so-and-so eat? Or look at that latest it girl, I want my body to look like that. What do they eat? Ooh, I see in the latest magazine out on the shelves, they're going to talk about what they eat in a day. And then the next thing you know, you're trying to eat like somebody else. You've totally become disconnected from your body again, and you're back in the loop. All right. So I know that probably a lot of the fitness influencers out there mean well by showing these videos. I don't think they're trying to cause any harm whatsoever. And in some cases, I think they're also trying to show people like, hey, look, I'm in shape, but I eat well. I eat plenty of food. I make room for treats. This is how I do it, And a prime example of that is Chloe Ting. And I love working out with Chloe Ting. I think she's awesome. I think she has a very healthy view of body image. I think she has a very healthy view of food, nutrition, all of that. I think she's extremely balanced and she's very positive and she doesn't bring any kind of body shaming bullshit into anything she does. She's wonderful. She's one of the reasons I was able to get back into fitness and training and be able to do it in a way that felt sustainable, that felt supportive, because she has such a balanced relationship with food and her body. But, at the same time, it ultimately, it doesn't really matter what Chloe Ting eats in a day or what anybody eats in a day. It doesn't matter if your friend went on this diet and they think it really worked for them. And so they're now telling you you should go on it too. This is a big part of recovery, is retaining your body autonomy, actually recovering your body autonomy. Because the fact of the matter is you gave it away a long time ago. So it's also one of the more kind of scary steps when it comes to recovery, because it means you have to start kind of rocking the boat a little bit. It means that when all your friends are talking about what they're eating and how they're dropping weight or what they're doing to, get their body the way they want it, and they're all swapping stories, especially women. Guys do this too. It's becoming a problem with men as well. Men, more than ever, are developing eating disorders. Men are starting to really feel a lot of the same aesthetic pressure that women have felt forever. They have unrealistic ideals set for them now too, and it's starting to affect men equally. Okay, it's a big issue. But this talk isn't supportive. It's not helpful. And so it means, when it comes around to you and your turn to share, you have to start kind of finding the inner strength to say, I'm just not interested in having these kind of discussions. I listen to my body. My body lets me know what it needs, and I respond to what my body needs. And in return, I feel good. I have good energy. I'm feeling really good about, the foods I'm eating. And I'm actually less stressed and more happy to be in the skin I'm in than I ever was when I was totally focused on that. So, you know, I understand you all want to have this conversation, but, I would rather talk about something else. And you can do it in a polite way. And maybe you take baby steps with that. But this is a big piece, And if somebody starts asking you what you're eating, how you're eating, if somebody tries to micromanage your food, tell you how to eat, tell you should get a smaller portion or whatever, one of the best things you can do is start to draw those boundary lines and say, hey, this is my body, and I'm going to listen to my body, and I'm going to feed my body in a way that feels right for me. And I understand that you want the best for me and that you want me to be healthy, but I'm a unique person, and what works for you won't necessarily work for me. And I'm approaching this in my own way. So I'd appreciate it if you just let me handle the nourishment of my body. Okay. It's a big, big, important step in coming to that place of recovery. So I hope that you found this discussion valuable. And, please, if you catch the replay and you have any questions about anything that I brought in or an experience you want to share, or maybe there's something you're struggling with and you don't know how to approach it in your social circle in terms of people kind of, butting their nose into how you're feeding yourself is concerned, and you'd like some support just in how to take the next step to sort of reclaim your body autonomy and your right to nourish yourself in a way that feels right for you. Okay. Drop me a comment. I'm happy to be here to support and to, help you ease into this transition. And I just really wanted to bring this piece in because it is such a hot topic, and it's something that's very popular now. It's one of the most sought after videos, on YouTube, is how these different, fitness influencers are eating. But I really want you to crack the code of your own unique route to health. And there's only one expert when it comes to that, and that's your body. And the best thing you can do is just starting to practice listening to what your body's telling you and listening to what your body really needs. Listening when your body is really telling you it's hungry because you got the gurgles going on, you got the little gentle gnawing is starting in your tummy. You feel that sense of emptiness. Your mouth is watering. You're thinking about food, okay? Noticing when you've had enough because you feel comfortably full, not overly stuffed, You feel really satisfied. You get to that place where you're eating, you go, you know what? I think one more bite and I'm good, And being able to stop there because you know what? Yeah, it tastes really good. And I kind of want to keep going just because of the party going on in my mouth. But the reality is I can have this whenever I want. So it's okay. I can stop. I can stop where I'm comfortably full. And if I want more later and I'm hungry, I can have more later. Okay. And if you are wanting a cookie or, a treat, see about going back to sort of tradition, like they did back in the 50s, you had dessert after you had your meal. Sort of like, okay, I understand, body. You're wanting some sugar, you're wanting something sweet. Nothing wrong with that. Wanting a little pleasure, but also understanding the piece that if you're thinking about sugar, you're probably needing some quick energy. And maybe you are not quite dialed into your hunger yet. You're still learning how to catch those first signs of hunger. So, kind of letting your body know, like, okay, it's cool. We're going to have a cookie. Don't worry about it. But what do we need to nourish ourselves with first? What sounds good? You need some nourishment. I can tell you need some nourishment because of these sugar cravings. All right. And listen to your body. Listen to your body and let it tell you what it needs for true nourishment. And then after you nourish yourself, cap it off with that cookie. You won't likely go overboard because you'll already be satisfied with the meal you ate, and you'll be able to just enjoy a little of it. Bring dessert back. Bring dessert back. I don't know why we got rid of this tradition. They did that forever. In the 50s, dessert was always part of dinner. I know when I was growing up, even in the 70s, there was always a little dessert after dinner. But it wasn't like some huge, smorgasbord of desserts. It was like, a little cup of ice cream, a cookie or two. And that was more than enough. All right. So just ease into it. Take your time and stop watching this crap. Stop tuning in to figure out how is somebody else eating. Stop picking up these magazines and seeing what the starlets are doing to, get their bodies in shape. Just stop. Just stop. Okay? Because they're not you. They're not you. And even with a lot of them, they have to be on it all the time. They have to have a team of trainers and cooks and all this stuff. Their whole life revolves around their looks, around how they look. You need something that's sustainable, where you can feel healthy, feel good in your skin, enjoy the way your body looks, right? It plays a role, okay? But it shouldn't be the primary. It shouldn't be the primary purpose of eating well. It should be how you feel, okay? So start putting more focus on how you feel, not what other people are doing or how other people feel about how you're eating or how your body looks. And you'll be one step closer to getting over this and getting to the other side, where you reclaim your natural way of eating, the way nature designed. All right. I hope that this gives you some support. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free, drop them in a comment. I'll be happy to give you the guidance you need to take the next step. And I'll be back in another couple of weeks, and we'll drop in again. Have a beautiful evening.